everybody, and welcome to this live stream. I'm just putting a little comment in the chat box over on the side. Hope you're all having a great Friday. Let me just write this, leave all your questions. Let's just put it in here. Please go ahead and ask a question by entering it in the chat box below. Probably should have done that before I started, but never mind. Right, let's pop that in the chat box. Welcome. Hello everybody. Hope you've had a really great week, and if you're in New Zealand, I hope that you had a good long weekend last weekend, especially if you're in the upper north half of the North Island, and if you are in the rest of New Zealand, then I hope you're going to have a really great long weekend this weekend. What are your plans? Let me know what your plans are for this long weekend down below. And if you're not in New Zealand, then I hope that you have a good weekend coming up as well. Before we go any further, technology is not my forte, so please, if somebody could just let me know that you can see everything okay and you can also hear everything okay, that would be really great. That'll help me out a lot. Right, so welcome. And so the way that this live stream works, it's been a little while since I've done a public live stream for everybody here on YouTube. So for people who are new here, people who haven't joined in a live stream with me before, basically I'm going to go through, or I'm just going to answer your questions tonight. I'll start off with a little bit of an introduction about what's been going on, and to cover off everything since the last video went up last week, and then you can start dropping your questions and things in the comment bar. And why not just say hello as well? Use that comment live chat feature to just say hello. I want to see and hear who is on here as well. So hopefully we've got a few of my patrons joining me today as well, so you'll get to interact with a few of them too. So thank you very much, Emma. Hi, very nice to see you, Emma. Welcome, and thank you for letting me know that you can see and hear. So we are good to go. I was trying to figure out how to connect my brand new camera. I've had it for months now. I was trying to figure out how to connect my fancy camera to this to get a better quality live stream for you, and as usual I left it all to the last minute, and I was trying to fiddle around with it a bit earlier this afternoon when I got home from work, and I think I almost got it working, but it wasn't perfect and I didn't want it to be cutting out. So hopefully next time I'll be using the fancy camera. So right, so where to start? This is always the most awkward part of the Q&A for me, is getting into my stride and just figuring out exactly where to start. But yeah, I mean, let's just start with the whole South Island misadventure and kick off from where that last episode left off. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody who left a comment and who hit the like button on that last video. I had such an overwhelming response from people, just, you know, everybody saying don't consider it a failure, don't think of yourself as anything less because you weren't able to do what you wanted to achieve. Just think of it as like a stepping stone on the way. And of course, over the last couple of months since that happened, I have slowly gotten to grips with exactly what it means, and of course I have learned that it isn't a failure. And I guess that's kind of what I was trying to do with the video, was trying to sort of say, well, you know, what does failure mean? Failure doesn't always necessarily mean failing. Sometimes it means going forward and being able to do new things and actually having completely different experiences and growing in a different way. And so I think that was the general consensus of feedback that I got off of last week's video. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who did reach out and say that, because, you know, not just for me, but for anybody else who was watching that video and thinking, you know, oh gosh, like I'm in that same category, or, you know, there might be people who have set out to do something like the TA before and not been able to go through, or they might be people who have got it coming up, something like that coming up, and they are a bit afraid that they might not be able to go all the way through with it. I think it really helps all of those people as well. And I have had a couple of people reach out to me and say, do you know what, you know, this exact thing happened to me, and this is how I dealt with it. And so that's been really nice. And I think it's actually quite a nice return to exactly why I started this channel in the first place, and that was to help people in similar situations to me. And, you know, a lot of the feedback that I have gotten over the last, what has it been, 6 weeks, I think, of posting these videos from the South Island has been, you know, thank you for putting all of this out there. Thank you for sharing the not so good bits as well as the good bits, you know, because you can Google Te Araroa videos on YouTube and you can find a whole bunch of videos that will show you the trail. But in my experience, there's not always an awful lot of them out there that are showing you a personal experience on the trail, and especially from the perspective of somebody who does suffer with, you know, different issues that might make it a little bit difficult for them. So that's why I wanted to start the channel, and so I'm kind of glad that I was able to come full circle with those videos, and like I said, actually put out that episode 6 at the end, to not only wrap up the whole thing, but also to bring it all back to where I started from. So that kind of segues nicely into what my plan is for the rest of the year in terms of video creation. Obviously, I was expecting that there would be another 20 episodes for you guys, because I was planning on hiking all the way to Bluff, but that didn't happen. So this year I'm going to try and focus a lot more on that sort of beginner's guide to hiking in New Zealand, because, you know, as somebody who's an immigrant to New Zealand myself, even though I think of myself as a Kiwi and a New Zealand citizen, I wasn't born and bred here. I didn't grow up hiking in the mountains. In fact, I didn't grow up hiking at all. I didn't even play sports. I wasn't a very athletic person when I was a kid, and I didn't, you know, spend time playing sports or engaging in anything really physical until I was in my late teens. And so this was never a natural process for me. And so I kind of want to connect with those people out there who are complete novices, who have absolutely no idea how to start hiking, and specifically about the conditions, the facilities, the tracks, the huts, all that kind of stuff that you'll find here in New Zealand, and the things that for me have been a little bit difficult to get used to. You know, like, it's great that we have these hut facilities out in the back country, but, you know, there are rules and regulations that come with using huts, and there are things that you need to do to use them. There are things that you need to be aware of when you're using them, and sometimes you need to be aware that maybe the hut isn't necessarily the best place to stay as well. So it's a little bit of a teaser of what I have to come. So if you have any ideas of things that you think should be or are really important to somebody who is just starting out hiking, regardless of whether it's here in New Zealand or whether it's just anywhere in the world, I'd be really happy for you to let me know. Reach out in a comment or send me a message on Instagram or something like that, and just give me your feedback, because you know, I've been asking for feedback a lot lately, and slowly starting to get it, and sometimes my brain doesn't always think of everything, so you guys are like my stopgap to tell me what I've missed. And let's try and put out a nice series or something, a short few videos, just to let people know the ins and outs of hiking in New Zealand if you're just getting started. So that's kind of where I want to go with the videos this year. And then of course I'll be interspersing that for the vast majority of the next little while anyway. There's going to be videos coming at you from the Able Tasman. There's going to be videos from Rakiura, obviously. There's a little day hike I did in the Nelson Lakes National Park. There's also a little day hike that I did before I returned back home. Sorry, day hike. There was a little overnight that I did before I returned back home from the South Island as well. So I'm excited to be putting those out to you. Those will be for the most part, probably the 2 Great Walks will be at least 2 or 3 episodes, and the other ones will probably be 1 or 2. Try and make the most of it because they are beautiful. And in between all of that and putting out these other instructional videos, then I will be also posting a few different videos about TA as well, because obviously that's where my passion lies, and that's what I like to do, is put content out there about the Te Araroa Trail. But I think that, you know, for a variety of different reasons, and some of which I did go over in that video last week, I might not stick to a strict uploading every week schedule this year. I think probably what I'll end up doing is putting out a series and then taking a break for a week, and then doing another video, maybe taking a break for a week, and doing things a little bit like that, so that I can take some of the pressure off of myself, and actually just so that I can get focused on getting myself better. So again, as I kind of alluded to in that video last week, the main reason why I had to get off the trail, even though I didn't know it at the time, is because I had a recurrence of a medical condition that I've been suffering with for a number of years. And unfortunately, that particular medical condition really does affect your physical ability to do anything. So that's kind of the main reason why I had to get off the trail. It's kind of why I wasn't able to do everything that I wanted to do when I was down on the South Island. But it's also meant that even though I am absolutely desperate and itching to get back out on the trail and to do like multi-day trips, and like you have no idea how difficult it's been last weekend and this upcoming weekend to have 3 days in a row off work and to not be able to go out and make the most of that is just crippling. In fact, it's worse than lockdown. I feel like lockdown was so easy and now I just feel like I'm caged in my house. But so yeah, that's kind of what I need to now work up to and build up to. And so last week I was able to get out on a slightly more difficult trail in terms of strenuousness, and that went quite well. It was pretty rough for a couple of hours, but it went pretty well after that. And so this weekend, I don't know where I'm going to go. If you've got suggestions, then I am more than open to them. I don't need anything too difficult, but I am open to a 4 or 5 hour hike. So if there's anything that you think is a really good place to go, then please drop it in the comments or let me know some other way. That would be really great. So that's pretty much everything to start with. That was my little introductory thing. So feel free to start asking questions whenever you want to. If there's no questions, that's fine. I will just babble and carry on talking about other bits and pieces. But what did you think of the whole South Island series as a whole? How did it compare to the North Island series? What were the things you enjoyed? What didn't you enjoy? What are your hiking plans for the next little while? Who have we got here? Where are you joining from? There's all sorts of questions, and yeah, let's have a chat with a nice drink. I'm only drinking water at the moment, but just bear with me 1 second. It's always a little bit weird having a drink or eating something when I'm doing one of these Q&As, but I have to get hydrated, otherwise I get a dry throat. So yeah, so I don't know, what trails have I got planned coming up? So provided that everything is, it all goes well in terms of recovery and things, I'm anticipating, it's quite annoying because it's probably going to take a good couple of months for that to really start kicking in properly, which means that that's basically the end of the summer. But I'm hoping that in about a month's time I'm going to be in a position to actually get back out there and do an overnight of some kind. I never ever posted a blog or pictures or video of one particular overnight hike that I did last year, and that was actually just after I got off of the TA last year. And I came home and I was itching to get back out on trail again. And so I managed to convince Mum to come out on an overnight trip with me. And we went down to the Tongariro National Park and we hiked out to the Whakapapa hut. And the reason why I'd chosen that hut in particular was mainly because of the distance. It's quite a decent 4-hour hike from Whakapapa village through to that hut. And so I knew that Mum could definitely hike it. And also the Whakapapa track that leads out to there, part of that is actually on Te Araroa. And so when we'd hiked through that on Te Araroa, I'd sort of thought to myself, well, it would be nice to go and see that hut. So I did a bit of research and we went out to this hut and we did it over a weekend. I think we did it on a Saturday and a Sunday, or it might have been a long weekend, I'm not too sure. So I was thinking, oh, well, it's going to be a weekend, there'll be other people there. And so we hiked from Whakapapa up to the hut, and it took us longer than we were expecting to start with. It took us about 5 hours. We got to a river crossing just before the hut, as it seems to happen in New Zealand. Usually your major river crossings are literally right before you get to the hut for the evening. And so we got there, we had this little mental thing of, okay, how do we get across this river? It was like, it wasn't very wide, but once you look down, it was quite deep. And Mum's about 4'6", 7, something like that. She's, oh no, 5 foot something. Oh gosh, I don't know, feet or inches. She's smaller than me, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, well, on her, the water is probably going to come up to just in the middle of her chest, you know, sort of in the middle of her abdomen. And that's going to be quite scary for her because the water in that particular stream, the Whakapapa stream, is quite fast flowing. It's also quite cold because it's, I guess at that time of year it's not really snow melt, but it comes directly from the mountain. Anyway, so we had a really great experience getting across this river, and we got to this hut, and it was late-ish in the afternoon, but it wasn't too late, such that, you know, I thought, okay, well, there'll be people turning up later. This is one of the huts on the round the mountain track, and so we got to the hut, obviously, had a little bit of a wash, went into getting our stuff all sorted, picked our mattresses out, started cooking dinner, and there was still nobody there. And it got later and later and nobody else turned up. And, you know, both Mum and I, we didn't actually say it at the time, but we both said it to each other later on, but we were both quite nervous that there was nobody else there. I wasn't expecting there to be nobody else there, and neither was Mum. And you know, there's something to be said for having company when you're out on a trail like that, especially if you're not naturally comfortable in that kind of an environment. So anyway, we sort of just made the most of it. I don't think either of us got a wink of sleep that entire night, because the hut itself, every 6, 7, 8 minutes, maybe a bit longer than that, would let off an almighty creak. Like, I've never heard creaking like it in my life, more like cracking actually. It was so loud and so, like it would wake you from your sleep, it was that loud. And so of course every time that happened we both kind of panicked, and Mum was panicking because of course she said the funniest thing to me, but she was like, well, oh, so we can't lock the door then? So I had to go through the, no, you can't lock the door in a hut, you have to leave it open. And I think that idea that anybody could come and go at any time was quite scary for her, as it is for anybody. And then I think about 4 o'clock in the morning or something, I went outside to go to the toilet, and the stars were so spectacular that I ended up going back inside. Mum wasn't asleep, grabbing my camera, going back outside, took a whole bunch of photos. I must have been outside for about half an hour, 45 minutes. And yeah, and then we sort of just hiked out again the next day. And again, at the time, in the moment, it was kind of a strange experience, and I'm not too sure whether, I mean, I was okay, I didn't mind it. I think Mum was probably a little bit like, oh, this is a bit strange. But looking back on it now, I have to say it's probably one of the best trips I have ever done. So I forget where I was going with all of that, but basically that would be really nice to go back to that hut again and have a similar experience to that. I think it would kind of ruin it now, actually, if I turned up there and there were other people there too. So that'll be on the list, and I think if I do end up doing that, then obviously I'd like to go and make a video about it too, because I haven't done that yet, and I really did enjoy it as a track to hike. So okay, so we have a few people dropping chats in the live chat window. Oh, I should mention as well, if you're watching off of like a mobile device or on a TV, obviously you're not going to be able to join in with the live chat. So go and grab a computer if you want to ask a question, and then we can have a good interaction here. Somebody called Seaweaver said there's 40% off tents at Kathmandu at the moment. There you go. Get yourself a bargain at Kathmandu. Leanne Parr. Hello, Leanne. Hi, how are you? She says, hi from Australia, all the way across the miles. She says, love watching your videos and seeing your beautiful country. What has been your favourite trail so far? So actual trail and not trip. I think I sort of read your mind there, didn't I? Because I've just covered sort of what is my favourite trip. My favourite trail, let's have a think. It's going to have to be something, do you know, it's too hard to choose. Can I give you a top 3? That'll work fine. So obviously anything in the Tongariro National Park for me is going to be way up there. So I was hesitating whether or not to say the crossing, the Tongariro crossing, because for me, I love to do that walk. But I know that, you know, a lot of people don't like it because it's too well populated. So I think that that is definitely one of the tracks that I will go back to again and again. And at the moment, and again, fingers crossed, I'm hoping to get up there very shortly because there's basically nobody out on the crossing at the moment. You know, obviously we don't have the tourists and things. So that would be up there, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favourite. If I had to choose a track in the Tongariro National Park, that would be my favourite. I would say it would be the Tama Lakes track. I thoroughly enjoy that track. It's a little bit boring to start with, so there's a lot of up and down, a lot of undulation, getting in and out of the lava flows and things like that. But once you get to the turn off to the Waihohonu Hut and you carry on hiking past that, then obviously you have all the views of the lower lake. And then if you're a bit braver and you want to climb up the scree slope and go up to the viewpoint at the upper lake, that has got to be one of the best views in the world, in my opinion, because you're standing right there sandwiched between Mount Ngātahoe behind you and seeing the upper Tama Lake there, and then looking straight out over to Mount Ruapehu, which is just down the valley, I guess. And everything seems so massive and so beautiful, and I've only ever done it on clear days, so I don't know if I'd get the same feeling if I was up there on a cloudy day, but it is beautiful. And if it's a beautifully clear day, you can see all the way over to Mount Taranaki as well, out on the west coast. So it's gotta be up there with one of the best tracks I've ever done. In terms of other tracks, I recently, so just before I came back off of the South Island, I did the part of the St James Walkway. I wouldn't say at the moment that was definitely my favourite track, but I see what that could have been leading up to, and I think I would have really liked that. But yeah, outside of that, it was funny because when I put out, I think it was episode 3 or 4 from this South Island series, and I was putting it all together and I saw all of my footage from that section into the Pelorus River track, probably that section right into Captain Creek Hut. I was thinking to myself, gosh, you know, like I never appreciated how beautiful this track was when I was actually hiking it because I was terrified. I had all this anxiety going on. I was terrified of the steep drop-offs and the narrow tracks and the little rock scrambles that I was having to do, and I guess probably subconsciously staying in a hut for the first night on the South Island. And I guess I was kind of blinkered in that way, but that particular section of track, and indeed the whole rest of that Pelorus River track through to Hackett Hut where I ended up getting out, was stunning. It was really hard work, you know, a lot of elevation gain. But the views of the river and going over those swing bridges, even though they were kind of terrifying, was amazing. Like, it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. So, yeah, I definitely say that that track is way up there on that list too. So, but you're in Australia. I want to know what your favourite track is in Australia because, you know, hopefully when these borders eventually open up, I might be able to get over there and start checking some of that stuff out. So thank you, Leanne. Emma says, Emma is, me and Emma go way back, no we don't, but yeah, Emma's always been very, very supportive here. So she says, are there any of those other trails in the world that you'd love to do? Reading my mind again, yes, there are literally tens of them. I was going to say hundreds, but I didn't want to exaggerate. I'm starting to build up quite a list. You know, the funny thing is, and I guess it might seem strange to those of you who are new to the channel, and maybe you've only just seen the South Island videos and you're thinking, oh, well, this person doesn't know how to thru-hike. It's funny how quickly it gets into your blood, the walking for days and days and weeks and months on end. And, you know, I think the biggest thing about getting off the trail this year was that I was so looking forward to not having to think about anything else for weeks and months except for just walking and sleeping and eating, and that was it. And, you know, there's a simplicity that comes out of that. that I crave. And almost immediately, as soon as I got back from the South Island and took myself out of that kind of environment, like the stress levels have built up so much, which is one of the reasons why I don't want to keep myself to such a strict uploading schedule this year. Even though I love making and putting out videos, for my own mental health, it's just not going to happen. And that's because, normal life for me just piles on and piles on and piles on and piles on and piles on. And before I know where I am, I'm, in the middle of a mental breakdown, basically. So I forget the point I was trying to make with that as well. But anyway, basically, yes, I am starting to build up a massive list of trails that I know that I can go to and, not have to worry about just a 2 or 3 day trip, something that I can do for a few weeks on end or months. So I don't know, I always try and keep these things a little bit under the table because I like to, keep it as surprises for people. But, what have we got to lose here at the moment? There's a bunch of trails in Australia that I would love to try and do. I would love to get to Tasmania and hopefully do the overland track. I actually was speaking to one of my patrons a day or so ago, and he is planning on heading out onto the Hasten Trail a little later on this year, and he's invited me to go along with him. Outside of that, I did already, before I started the TA this year, have my sights on doing one of the Caminos in Spain. I was actually planning on doing that, or hoping to do that, with Mum. I've been dropping little hints here and there, and we were going to tie that in with a trip back to England to see my grandma, who's turning 94 this year. So I was really looking forward to being able to do that. And there's a whole bunch of trails in the UK that I would love to do, like the Southwest Coast Pass and Path. Can't say that. Southwest Coast Path. And we were watching a TV series the other day, which is ongoing, about a trail that goes the length of Hadrian's Wall. There's so many trails out there that I would love to do. But the big one that started this entire thing is the Pacific Crest Trail. And so I am working my way up to being able to do that. And I obviously don't know when that's going to happen. Everything now is a little bit up in the air, and I guess I'm just at the mercy of the trail gods. I do know that it's going to cost me probably the best part of $25,000 to do that, so I am absolutely nowhere near close having any of that put aside, ready to go and do that. Maybe 20,000. So I need to really start, and of course, the more that I want to do all these other trails and things, they all cost money too. So for me, it's really a financial thing that stops me a lot of the time. I hate flying, so at some point I have to get over the fact that I have a pathological fear of getting onto planes. But that's a minor thing. The financial thing is really the biggest thing at the moment. So this year I'm going to be working on trying to put away some more savings so that I can start working towards some of those trails. But yes, the Pacific Crest Trail is the pinnacle of what I am aiming for at the moment. So I'm just working towards that every single day. So yes, so thank you for the question though. Hope that that answered everything fine. Okay, so where am I here? Oh, Subculture NZ says you can chat from mobile. Oh, that's good. That is good, because I don't know, are you on Android or are you on iOS? Because I've tried to join from my iPhone before and chat, and I haven't been able to do it. So yes, let me know how you can do that, because I can never chat on other people's live streams. Jeffrey Stewart. Hi, Jeffrey. Nice to see you. Jeffrey is one of my brand new patrons. He just joined up a couple of days ago. And he's already asking heaps of really great questions, and he's actually planning on doing a little section hike of the TA as well at the start of February. So hopefully I'm helping you through the conversations we've been having to prepare for that. So good on you, Jeffrey. So he says, is there any mode of travel aside from by foot you'd like to try as a way to see a trail? For example, biking, skiing, horseback, that's on your to-do list. So when I got off the TA last year, I remember getting quite heavily into the Tour Aotearoa, which basically is the bike version of the TA. So for those of you who don't live in New Zealand or maybe just don't flock in these circles, there is a walking route for the Te Araroa trail, so the long pathway, and then there is also a cycle route that goes from Cape Reinga to Bluff, which is called the Tour Aotearoa. And I knew nothing about the Tour Aotearoa until I got to Auckland when I was on the TA last year. And one of the ladies that I was staying with, she was actually telling me all about it. And I kind of had this little seed planted in my mind. And then when I got off the trail, I decided to look into it a little bit more. I liked it from the perspective that I really appreciate people who go into an endeavour similar to a long distance hike. So whether that be cycling somewhere or a human powered trip of some kind, or even just a long adventure. I really like watching motorbike tours and things like that. So that for me is an interest, and that's kind of what led me to the Tour Aotearoa. They only do it for a certain period or at a certain time of year, and basically the riders all start in waves. And so last year I was watching the interactive map to see where all the different people were. It never occurred to me whether I would actually want to do that. I've never been into mountain biking or cycling of any kind, but I guess, it's always there in the back of my mind. And so it is potentially something that I would like to do a little bit further down the track. But at the moment, in terms of traveling around, not by foot, one of my other big goals at the moment, I got my motorbike license before I went onto the South Island. And so I'm now learning how to ride a motorbike so that I can do some motorbike travel trips around the world once everything starts to open up as well. So I really like the idea of exploring entire countries on two wheels rather than four wheels. Of course, I'd always prefer to just hike the country if I can. And those other long trails that I didn't mention, there's a couple that go from like Canterbury in England down to Rome, and there's a couple of other ones as well that I would just absolutely love to do. Motorbikes are my next best thing to travel around on, some adventure motorbiking. Right, Emma said the Bibbulmun in Western Australia is her fave here in Australia. Is that 10,000? No, it's 1,000 kilometres. Can't quite see. She hasn't completed it yet, but she's done a few hundred kilometres of it, and the PCT started it all for you too. That's amazing. Wow, a couple of 100 kilometres. You're right. I mean, the Bibbulmun is one that I've heard. Am I saying that right? I'm sorry, I'm useless with Australian words. But yeah, that's another one that I have heard of as well. The biggest thing for me in Australia isn't the creepy crawlies and snakes and all that kind of stuff. It's just the heat. The heat is the biggest thing for me. So I don't know, what's the best time to hike those trails over in WA? My mum should be coming over to Perth later on this year, so maybe she can do some research for me. Tim Harris is here. Hi, Tim. How are you? He says, I hate flying too. Have a couple of drinks before you hop on the plane to calm the nerves. Good advice. Very good advice. Very good. I have my methods of getting through terrible flying. I can't drink when I'm flying because drinking elevates my heart rate, which then makes me anxious, which then makes me over anxious, which then basically means I can't get on the plane. But I appreciate the sentiment. If you can tell me something else that works where you don't have to have a drink, like ideally I'd just like somebody to knock me out, before I get on the plane. That would be fantastic. But as yet, no luck. So. Subculture in NZ says, it might be because I am on Android. Yes, maybe, because I haven't tried it on my Android phone yet, so I'll have to have a look. And Tim says, be careful on a motorbike. I know, it's terrifying. Do you know, the funny thing about it is that my dad has been riding motorbikes for years, not extensively and not regularly, but he really likes his motorbikes, and that's kind of where my passion came from. But since I got my motorbike license, the amount of times I'll go and sit down with him and he'll put YouTube on and show me things like videos with titles like the worst crash I ever had, or I don't know, one of them was a guy who was riding in America, I think around Big Sur, that kind of way, and he took a corner wrong and he was obviously going too fast, and he just went flying over a cliff and survived with no injuries. But yeah, this was one of the videos that Dad thought it was appropriate to show me, so I'm going to be super careful. You know, you got to be careful in New Zealand when you're on the roads regardless. So yeah, but I'm excited because I really want to learn how to ride. So sorry, Emma says she's on OS and no problems here. So it's just me and my technology then. I'm useless. Maybe you can let me know how to do it later, Emma, because I can't figure it out. Oh, okay. All right, we have Stephen Yates here. Hi, Stephen. Hope you're well. Okay, he's asking me a TA question. Right, we're back on my subject of expertise. Okay, is there a list of trail angels on the trail notes, and how do we find out about them? Yeah, it's a bit, I mean, the trail notes aren't perfect, right? You know, don't get me wrong, I love the TA Trust. I've spoken to Mount Weatherall on a number of occasions, and you know, they do the best that they can with the resources that they've got, and that's fantastic. But the trail notes really still aren't that fantastic. I'm not sure that I have a better suggestion for how to set everything out, or you know, how to make sure that everybody has the information in a rational and logical place, but I do certainly know that the way that they are set out at the moment is not ideal. But I also know that the reason why they are set out the way they are is because the Te Araroa Trust is focusing all of their resources on section hikers, not through hikers. So make of that what you will. I don't have an opinion on that at all. It's just that's the way that it is. So that's why I expect they are the way they are. In terms of, is there a list of them in the trail notes? No, there is no list. But if you read the trail notes and you get down to the accommodation sections of each of the different sections of the trail, you will find details of the trail angels in there. I'm actually working on a resource at the moment, which I think will make it a lot easier for a lot of people to get all of that kind of information together. I guess the thing with the trail angels, though, is that they change on a very regular basis, and the trail angels aren't necessarily always very good at keeping the trust up to date with whether they're providing accommodation or not. And I'm not saying that it occurred on a regular basis or not, but I did come across a couple of trail angels who were just getting flustered and overwhelmed by the amount of hikers, and they didn't really know what they could do to make the situation any better, and it seemed like there just wasn't that connection there between them and the trust. Often the way the communication was going was through TA hikers who were giving feedback to the trust, who was then getting in touch with the particular trail angel. But there is also a Facebook group. I personally never really used it. I think it's called something like TA Trail Angels or something like that. It's usually linked on the, actually, I should probably find that out for you, shouldn't I? Let's just see if I can bring it up here. But it's kind of like the Te Araroa yearly groups. It is a specific group which just tells you who the TA Trail Angels are. So all the Trail Angels will sign up for that particular forum. And let's just see if I can find it. Maybe I shouldn't call it TA. Maybe I should call it Te Araroa Trail Angels. It is. It's called Te Araroa Trail Angels. And let me just see. Yeah, see, I think a lot of it is sort of for hikers to go on there and to say, I'm in this section, I'm going to be at this place in 2 or 3 days. Is there a trail angel there who can put me up? And then if any trail angels are registered on that forum, then they will leave you a comment back there. So it's kind of a little bit wishy-washy, but I have to say it has its merits. When I was hiking the North Island and I got into the section over Mount Parongia, coming down off of Parongia, especially if you're staying at the hut at the top, there's not, or at least when I was hiking it, I didn't know that there was any accommodation between there and, must have been Waitomo, somewhere like that. So I funnily enough, had cell phone reception on the top of Mount Pirongia, and I was actually messaging a fellow hiker who said that she found somebody who had a place a little bit further along the road than the first Trail Angels that you'll come to. So I was trying to get as far down the road as possible because it was only about 15 kilometers to the first Trail Angel, and I wanted to do a longer day than that. And I found that I ended up finding that particular Trail Angel on Facebook. That was Casey Hufstadter at the First Landing Retreat, and I believe that they're still doing the Trail Angel service for the time being as well. The Trail Angels that are a bit closer, that are at the start of the Karamu Valley, no, not Karamu Valley Road. Oh, I've forgotten the name of the road now, but the Trail Angels that are at the start of that road that First Landing Retreat is on are also very popular with hikers. There is also a Trail Angel a little bit further along the road, and all of these people I found out about by not only contacting other hikers that I've been hiking around who I knew were ahead of me, but also by Facebook and different forums like that. So check out the Te Araroa Trail Angels page if you want something like that. And then, like I said, stay tuned because I'm going to have a resource coming out that's going to help everybody with that a little bit later on this year. Okay, so Emma says that hiking the Bibbulmun track is late autumn through to early spring because the bushfire is too great a risk in summer. Yeah, that's what I think I would be pretty scared of at the moment, and I guess they kind of seem to be getting worse every year. I don't know if that's your feeling as well, but awesome. I'm going to have to do some research on that stuff there now, so and hopefully get some money together and some time off work. So yeah. And Subculture says Valium. Yeah, Valium. Yeah, that's my preferred drug of choice. Okay, Emma says, did you prefer hiking in a group or alone on the TA, or did it depend on the day and whether there were other people around? Either way, do you prefer one over the other? So on the TA, yeah. So because I started the TA with basically no other hiking experience whatsoever, I was really nervous about being by myself. The entire time that I was on the North Island, I wanted to make sure that I was always around somebody at camp every night. And for probably the first half of the North Island, I didn't even want to hike by myself alone during the day. I'd had an experience with getting lost in a forest before I started the North Island, and even though I wasn't really lost, it was still pretty terrifying. And so I was a little bit scared about being on my own through dense bush sections like that. The further I got down the Te Araroa route, though, the more comfortable that I became with hiking through forests and following orange triangles and generally just following the trail and getting used to using things like the TA app and Gut Hook and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of something that did end up going away after a little while, but that desire to still be around people and to still be hiking with people and not to pitch my tent alone at night was still pretty high. And in fact, it turned out to be a silly worry because of the nature of the trail when I hiked it last year and the fact that there were probably 2,500-3,000 people hiking it along with me. I was never going to be alone on the trail at night. It just never happened. There was always somebody else there. I don't even think there was only one time when it was just Julia and I. And that was when we stayed in Waikari at the Waikari Inlet with one of the Trail Angels there. I don't know if I would have been uncomfortable staying at that particular place by myself. I probably would have been just because of how it was. But, even then I had Julia there. So there was generally always a good handful of other people there. And the only other night where I thought I was going to get close to that was when I came out of the Mangokawa Reserve track and stayed at the camp that had been set up there by one of the landowners, and it got to about 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night before another hiker turned up. So I thought I was going to have to be by myself there, and it turned out I didn't. It's a different beast at the moment because there just aren't the numbers on the trail. So it's you have to be prepared to be on your own at the moment. I don't know what the North Island is like this season, obviously, because I haven't hiked it, but if it's anything like the South Island, then I would expect to be pitching my tent every night and probably not seeing anybody. And that's just because the numbers have dwindled. And I think I'd be nervous about doing that. Like I said, there's no substitute for having somebody else around for comfort. And I think the only thing that really helps you with that is just spending more time doing it. So again, a lot of what I ended up doing on the South Island when I got off of the trail was to try and get myself more confident with doing things by myself. And so going out and deciding to hike tracks completely solo was an experience that I had never done before, and I now feel a lot more comfortable with. You know, when I went out to do the Abel Tasman, that was the first trail I'd ever hiked, first multi-day trail I'd ever hiked completely solo. And you know, I met a really cool girl at the start of it, who I desperately need to get back in touch with because she messaged me and I still haven't. And, you know, we were staying at completely different campsites. And, you know, my initial reaction when I started that trail was, okay, I need to stick around this girl. So if there's any way that I can stay at other campsites, then I really want to do this. But, you know, her heart came and went, and I left her there and I carried on hiking, and I pitched my tent somewhere else and I stayed in a campsite. You know, there were other people around, but there wasn't any other hikers around that I knew. And, you know, the more I did that, you know, like on Rakiota, okay, I was in huts with plenty of other people, but I spent the majority of the day hiking alone. I think the South Island experience for me on the Te Araroa trail was a lot different to what the North Island was, and I kind of was thrown into having to hike alone on a for most of the day. So I got used to it really quickly, and so it enabled me to then have a nice transition through to hiking some of these other trails alone. So that now, you know, it's really not a big deal. In terms of what do I prefer, I would rather be on the trail with somebody else. I would much rather have somebody else as company on a trail than I would go and do it alone. But I don't need to let doing it alone stop me from going out anymore. I've become comfortable with it. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to stop talking so much. Right, Subculture New Zealand says, do you think it would be worthwhile for the government to make the TA a great walk, and what kind of infrastructure would be necessary? I don't think that is a really interesting question. Thank you for asking that, because it is a really interesting question. I don't think that it would ever make great walk status, because, you know, if you think about what a great walk is in New Zealand, and apologies if you're not from New Zealand, you may not know, but a great walk is generally a track that has been graded to a certain level to make sure that it is accessible for the vast majority of people. That includes obviously making climbs not quite as steep as they might otherwise have been. It includes doing things like graveling tracks, making tracks wider. It includes putting in infrastructure like huts and toilets, sometimes flushing toilets, obviously water supplies and facilities like rain tanks. It includes having rangers out there to give information to people who might not otherwise have the information. You know, there's a lot of effort and work that goes into a great walk, and I don't think TA is necessarily conducive to that, and I think it would take away a lot of the experience. But I think what would really be beneficial is to create a proper wilderness corridor, something along the lines of what has been created for the great long distance trails in the US. And I'm not too sure about other long trails in other countries, but I assume maybe they have a similar sort of thing. So I really advocate for this wilderness corridor idea. I believe that there should be one single route the entire length of the country that is Crown land or Department of Conservation land, whatever it is, and it is specifically to be used for the Te Araroa Trail. And whether that ends up happening by the Te Araroa Trust slowly acquiring land off of different landowners, yeah, I mean, there are many different ways that could happen, and I guess this is where my legal background kind of comes into play, because I can envisage exactly how that could happen. You know, a lot of the TA is routed through private farmland, and I understand that presents quite a big objection for those landowners, but I think, you know, if you're able to create easements and corridors through those particular parcels of land. There's no reason why they couldn't still continue to operate in the way that they do, and still use some of that land for transiting animals and all that kind of stuff, but have the actual land itself owned by the Department of Conservation or by the Crown, so that they still have the ability to maintain it. There would be resources thrown in for volunteers to continue to maintain it as well, and to keep it at a nice grade, so that you are walking on an established path the entire time, as you would if you are doing something like the Pacific Crest Trail. That would be my goal for the TA. But I understand that that is not the vision of Jeff Chappell. It was never the vision of the people who put together the idea of a long trail through New Zealand. New Zealanders are New Zealanders. There's no other way to say that. They like the hard yakka. They like to put effort and grit and grunt into achievements. And I think that is why, the TA has been rooted the way that it has been rooted. Even just take the section over the Richmond Alpine route, for example. I don't think that that is a section that is aimed at a thru hiker. I don't even think it's necessarily a section that is aimed at a section hiker. I don't know that a lot of thought was ever really put into the fact that when somebody commits themselves to hiking Te Araroa, chances are they're going to want to hike the entire length of it. And just because, they get comfortable doing particular sections and things doesn't necessarily mean that they're physically capable of doing certain sections. And even though I have no doubt that the Richmond Alpine route is stunningly beautiful and a beautiful section of the country to hike, the reality is that for some people it is insurmountable. And so, those people then have to live with the idea of not being able to fill in that particular section of the trail. I think if you understand that and you know that when you're going in, then that's fine. But if there was a way to make that trail a little bit more, maybe not like a great walk, but certainly a little bit safer, a little bit wider, a little bit this, a little bit that, it would make it a lot easier for a lot of people. But yeah, that's my vision for the trail, but I also understand that that will probably never happen because it doesn't really go with the trust vision of the trail at the end of the day. It was designed to be a Kiwi tramp. It's just that a lot of people don't understand what a Kiwi tramp actually is. I didn't understand that before I started. So, but yeah, great question. Great question. Jeffrey Stewart says, I read a few blogs about people's TA adventures. Is it correct to say that most people are sobos? With that in mind, how often or likely is it that you bump into other trail walkers? So yes, Jeffrey, the vast majority of people are sobo walkers. And for those who aren't familiar with that terminology, sobo means southbound. I don't have an idea of percentages. There are a decent handful of people every year that will hike in a northbound direction. Usually those people, I say usually, most of the people who are hiking in that northbound direction will usually just be hiking the South Island only. And the reason why they start and decide to do it in a northbound direction is because the start of the South Island, if you're hiking north, is a lot gentler than starting at the top of the South Island and hiking down to Bluff, because as I kind of showed, within the first 10 days you're right into some of the biggest climbs, some of the most technical terrain if you're hiking southbound. So starting from Bluff means that you just have a little bit longer to build up your fitness and get a bit used to the trail before you get into the real grunt of it. What was the second part of that question? How likely is it that you bump into the other trail walkers? Certainly when I was hiking last year, as I said, there were always people around. Very, very rarely was I ever alone. Usually there were at least two other people in the general vicinity of me, outside of me and Julia. More often than not, there were usually 4, 5, 6 other people, and on a few occasions you'd find yourself in a bubble of TA hikers and there'd be 8, 10, 12, 15 of you. And that's just kind of how the trail worked. People walk at different paces, people take 0 days at different times, but you always bump into people. Again, caveat that by saying the trail is a completely different beast this year. It's not the same trail that I walked last year. We were hiking for 6 days before we bumped into any other TA walkers on the South Island, and then when we carried on and we left those people behind, I didn't see any other TA hikers again, and I don't believe that Claire and Kev ever did either. Maybe one or two, but that was it. So yeah, it's a completely different beast at the moment, and I think, you know, in hindsight, I realize now that that environment was not the right environment to put me in either. I think if there had been a lot more people around on the trail, I probably would have considered going straight from Nelson down to maybe St Arnaud, or maybe just to Hammer Springs and joining up down there, because I would have been more confident that there would have been people down there. But yeah, it wasn't like that at all this year. However, in saying all of that, I do know that there is a substantial group of people who have been moving through the North Island and who have been starting to hit the South Island in the last few weeks. So I think if you find yourself in amongst that kind of general bubble of people, then you'd feel like there were a lot of people around. But certainly for me, when I was doing it, it didn't feel like that at all. And again, that had to do with me starting it a little bit earlier in the season as well, which in hindsight wasn't the best thing to do. JD80 is here, and they say, hi there, just wanted to say that your channel is very inspirational and thank you for sharing your journey. You're welcome. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for letting me know. Somebody else to add to the list of people who've just been so incredibly generous in saying that, you know, they appreciate the videos. I'm glad that you like them, so don't forget to leave me suggestions if you have something you'd like to see in particular. Subculture New Zealand says, carrying on from my first question regarding the Great Walk, would it be possible to remove the road sections? As from many bloggers, I have seen them complain about the long road sections. Do you mean, is it possible to hike now and remove the road sections, or do you mean something that we need to aim for in the future, taking out the road sections? Because, oh, hang on a minute, I'm getting a sore throat. Obviously the trust is working on getting that percentage of road walking all the way down. If you've done research on the TA at the moment, I think you'll see that the trust estimated, or the trust's official figure on how much road walking there actually is, I think is something like 13%. Somebody can correct me on that. It's quite low anyway. But I actually did a calculation for the North Island, and I calculated exactly how many kilometres were on some form of road. So not just a sealed road, but also gravel tracks, farm tracks, anything that wasn't a specific wilderness pathway. And it worked out to something like 700 kilometres, which is a substantial chunk of the Te Araroa route. I think that's right. I put it in my video about road walking, so if you want to get the exact numbers, then go and check out that video. But a substantial proportion of the trail is on road, and it's not just a sealed road or a public road. It can be a farm track, a dirt bike track, not a dirt bike track, but like a four-wheel drive track through a farm. You know, all these things which I class as roads, but apparently the trust doesn't. So can they be removed? Sure, they can always be rerouted. But the thing is, where do you reroute it to? Because you still have to go through private land, and you still have to get those access agreements with landowners. And usually the reason why the trail is routed, well, there's two main reasons why the trail is routed along a road. The first reason is because they can't get the agreement of the landowner. Now, that might be for one of a couple of reasons. That might be because the landowner just doesn't want to entertain that idea regardless. So they've approached them in the past about it and they've just never granted access. The second biggest reason is that the landowner has previously granted access, but Te Araroa hikers have abused their privileges on that land, and so they've revoked the access. So that's a problem that we as hikers really need to take into account. And the second biggest reason why, or in my experience, why roads are routed as part of the TA is because they will go through areas like the Northern Forest where there is Cody dieback disease, and the local iwi up there are really pushing very hard to minimise the impact of thousands of hikers through those regions. And so they basically closed it off for the trust. And, you know, of course, we don't want to be spreading these diseases and damaging the Kodi trees and all that kind of stuff up there. And I totally, you know, I'm on board with all of that. But sometimes there can be other cultural reasons why the trail can't be routed through a particular area. I understand just recently this similar sort of thing has happened with the Russell Forest section. So there's now quite a long road walk around that particular area for that reason as well. So yeah, there are ecological things, not environmental arguments there as well for why the trail is routed on road. But again, I think that if we could aim towards a wilderness corridor so that there is a specific slither of land going through these particular areas, and that we were able to clear, you know, the rest of the forest a little bit, so that we weren't directly going to be affecting or infecting Kodi trees, or putting a specific path through those sections so that we're not picking up the dirt on our boots and potentially spreading it to other sections of the country. You know, there's definitely stuff that can be done, but of course it's all money. And, you know, this is why it's so important to pay those trail donations, because everything costs money. Everything costs money. And he says as well, also regarding the Richmond section, I did notice a lot of it emergency four-wheel drive tracks, which I tramped and almost died from Pelorus to Nelson. Pelorus to Nelson. Do you mean coming out from Pelorus to Nelson? I'm not quite sure what you mean there, but yes, it's yeah, it's a lot of roads. It's still a lot of road. And of course, I didn't really get a feel for exactly how much of the South Island is road as well. But, you know, there are little road connecting sections between different chunks of the trail. But then I also know that there are sections through farmland as well, especially as you get further south. And of course, I'm sure that that probably involves different gravel tracks and things too. So, yeah, I mean, there's not a perfect solution. I guess the important thing is that they are working towards having a continuous trail, and it's just about taking little baby steps towards all of that. But the biggest thing that anybody can do, or that we as hikers can do, is of course practice all those leave no trace principles, make sure that we're complying with camping restrictions and not pushing the boundaries. And yeah, it's funny because I read an article today, or a blog post from somebody who completed the trail a few years back, and you know, I get the impression that it's mainly overseas hikers who have a real problem with how much money it costs to hike the trail. Maybe it's Kiwis as well, but certainly in my experience, it was more those overseas people who were making an issue of that. And this particular person had, you know, made a point of saying, they were very good, and they said, you know, there are areas where you can't camp and you must pay attention to, you know, not camping on private land or areas where it says no freedom camping. But then they specifically went out of their way to say, you know, it's the reason why freedom camping is held in such disdain in New Zealand is because, you know, of the caravan people and the the people who tour around in caravans, and people leaving rubbish behind and human feces behind and not cleaning up after themselves. And so if you wanted to stealth camp, then you could stealth camp as long as you left no trace. And I understand the point that they were trying to get across, don't get me wrong, but it's little things like that that encourage people to do the wrong thing. And at the end of the day, when you're on Te Araroa, it's not just the fact that you might be leaving rubbish behind or you might be leaving your own human waste behind. It's also the fact that if you're camping on somebody's farm, that is a working farm. And so A, it's a hazardous environment, and B, it also could potentially affect the well-being and the health of the cattle that you are camping around. It means that you could potentially be putting yourself in a dangerous situation because the farmer might not know that you're there. And so if he decides to run his cattle through that farm the next day, you could be putting yourself in a really difficult position. You know, you could end up leaving gates unlocked behind you unwittingly, or get locked in somewhere unwittingly. You know, there's a lot of other reasons that go into these rules and regulations that we have, especially when hiking through private land. And, you know, it's not just all about the idea that people who stay in tents or whatever are going to leave some kind of a trace behind them. So I kind of went way off track there with it a little bit, but yeah, that's kind of my opinion on all of that. So yeah, I think it would be nice to work towards some kind of wilderness corridor. So okay, so you say, thank you for answering my questions regarding the Great Wall, but a wilderness corridor I agree with. Yeah, I think it would be a nice thing to work towards. I really do. So I'm just dropping little hints at the moment with Mark Weatherall at the Trust just to see if any of it takes. But, you know, I mean, I've worked a little bit in the legal environment in Australia, and I know that the idea of takebacks, land takebacks for private companies is quite a big thing. Don't seem to do quite so much of it here in New Zealand. But, you know, paying a little bit of compensation for a little bit of land to go to a private company, and most people are generally pretty happy with it if you enter into a bunch of covenants with people. So, you know, you say you're going to take care of the land and you're not going to affect the other adjoining landowner to a certain extent. You know, I could see how it could work, but doing it in practice, of course, is a little bit different. And at the end of the day, anything like that, even if you started it tomorrow, is going to take decades. So, but it's better to be working towards something than to not be. So anyway. Right, so that was the last little question we've got on the chat there. I know we're at about an hour now, but if there are any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box as well, and I'll stay here as long as there are questions to answer. But yeah, oh gosh, I've got a really sore throat, and I'm probably losing my voice a little bit now. Can you hear that? Oh, also, look at this cool sticker. I have gotten a whole shipment of Long White Gypsy stickers, and I'm not saying that to promote it, but I'm just actually really happy with how they turned out. And this one is actually like resistant to water and sunshine, so I just put it over the Nalgene logo on my Nalgene bottle. Isn't that cool? Looks really good. So anyway, right. So we have Jeffrey Stewart asking another question. Oh, you guys are so active. It's great. So he says, are there any common courtesies to adhere to when bumping into other walkers? Well, I mean, there are, but whether or not you do or not is a complete another subject, really. But I mean, Te Araroa walkers, okay, you're going to all know what you're doing. You can generally spot a TA walker from a mile off. You know, they don't tend to look like day hikers for a start with, and you'll just have an instant connection with them too. So generally, whenever I bumped into a TA walker on the trail, you know, you'd stop and chat for 10 minutes probably, depending on what direction they were going in, or you might even hike a certain proportion of that trail with them as well. Bumping into day hikers, as far as is there a courtesy from me to you? Well, there's always going to be a courtesy from me to another hiker because that's just how I hike. But what I did find was that I didn't necessarily always get courtesy from day hikers and people like that. There is, quite funnily, a recognized trail etiquette, which I think is quite popular in the United States in particular. I don't know if anywhere else in the world, where if you are hiking downhill, you should be giving way to the person hiking uphill. Quite common knowledge. I assume it's practiced relatively widely, but I'm also sure that there are issues with people not adhering to that as well. But, you know, that's something that is not really very prevalent here. In fact, you know, as with a lot of other things in New Zealand, it's kind of each man for himself. So I actually got to the point where it was almost like road rage. Sometimes if I was hiking a particularly difficult section and there was somebody coming towards me, I would just put my head down and just hike straight up the middle of the track, because chances are they weren't going to move over and let me past. And they were usually day hikers, and I just got really frustrated because, you know, chances are by that point I'd already been hiking 20 kilometers that day with 15 kilos on my back, and I was exhausted and tired and hungry. And yeah, I didn't want to put up with that. And I think actually the biggest place where it was a problem, which I hate to say, but it was the Tongariro crossing, because the TA route for southbounders hikes directly against the main flow of hikers on the Tongariro crossing, and there were hundreds of people that we passed that day, and not one of them moved aside, even though we were in the middle of an 1100 meter climb up the mountain with 15 kilos on our backs. So, or more than that. Yeah, so I got really quite annoyed by that. But yeah, it's there's not really any, I mean, aside from your general common courtesies, there's not really any specific rules in New Zealand to adhere to. It's just, you know, be nice to other people. And yeah, I mean, I get quite it's funny because I enjoy listening to music out loud, and there have been occasions where I've been hiking around other people who have been playing music out loud, hiking down the trail. And you know, there are a lot of people out there who are vehemently against that, and they think that you should keep your music to yourself and whatever. And I totally agree. But if you're with a bunch of other people who don't mind playing that music out loud, and you know that there's not really anybody else around, I don't see the problem in playing a bit of music. Yeah, you just got to be conscious of the fact that there might be other people around and it might not be appropriate. But yeah, outside of that, it's all just common courtesies. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't have anything else to add on that. Subculture says, let's take over the trust of the wilderness corridors. Top of the agenda. I'm on board. Yeah, I'm on board with that. I was actually considering whether or not to get a little bit more involved in the trust. I don't really know how that would work, but obviously I have expertise that may or may not be beneficial to them. But I don't know. I think the problem is that it would be a voluntary position, and whereas I don't mind that, unfortunately, I do have a lot of other stuff going on in my life as well, and you know, I do need to earn money, and so if I wouldn't be able to devote any more time necessarily to being on the trust because I have to go to work. So yeah, but I would love to be involved in it in a bigger capacity, although I wonder if that would take the magic away, really. Sometimes, you know, having to do things like negotiate with people and, you know, really having to get your teeth into the nitty-gritty of things can be quite demoralizing, I guess. So yeah, I don't know if getting involved with the trust would be a bit too, yeah, it would spoil the magic a little bit for me. But anyway, it would be nice to help out a little bit more. The best way that I can contribute at the moment is to make donations. So right, so we have Sarah Ruth here. Hi Sarah, excuse me while I get a little bit more comfortable. She says, what's your next adventure? So yeah, we talked about this a little bit at the start, but I don't really have another adventure planned. I mean, I guess I kind of do. The first little adventure that I have planned is to go on an overnight hike down into the Tongariro National Park. So I'm hoping to go down to Whakapapa Easy Hut down there. But it's going to be a little way in the future, probably a month or so away at the moment, just until I can get myself back into a good health area, a good health level. After that, there is also a loop track that I would love to complete down in the Kaimanawa Ranges, down at the bottom of the lake here. It's called the Urchin to Umakarikari Loop. I've been saying that wrong for so long. I've been saying Umakariri. I don't know why, but it's Umakarikari. And it's just like a nice little ridge walk down at the bottom of the lake, and I like my ridge walking, so I thought that would be a nice little track for me to do. And Mum and I might even end up doing the timber trail on a couple of bikes as well, or maybe Mum and Dad will, and I'll just send them off and I'll stay here and look after the dog, but that'll be quite cool. But in terms of longer trips than that, I think probably most of them are just going to be little overnight adventures this year. Yeah, until the summer season rolls around, and I'm upset because it's really just the health stuff that's holding me back at the moment. And I desperately want to get out there and do overnight tracks, but there's a lot of stuff kind of holding me back from doing that at the moment, and it's a real shame because most of it isn't in my brain anymore. It's all to do with my body. Oh, and there's Matangi Island, Matangi Island, I would love to go to. So I actually might even just take a weekend and go and do some hiking up there as well. See some birds, because I've really enjoyed learning about all the different birds this year. I got myself a little bird book, and yeah, now I just love spotting all the little birds, and it's great. You'll see more of that when I post the Abel Tasman videos. So yeah, that's kind of my plan for the next little while. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Oh, and Subculture says, I think you should, but I imagine there would be some major politics. Yeah. There's always politics. There's always politics and those kinds of things. I guess it doesn't matter as long as you are passionate about what you're fighting for. And yeah, I can see the TA playing a big part of my life in the future. So yeah, we'll just see. Yeah, so I guess that's basically it for now. Does anyone else have any other questions? I guess one of the big questions I've been asked just lately is, when are you going back? When are you going to finish the South Island? Again, I've had some amazing support from people saying, you know, don't worry or stress about doing anything, just go and do it at your own pace and at your own time. And of course, I'm not being pressured or anything like that. You know, what other people think doesn't really matter to me. I will do it when I want to do it. But even even just after I left the trail, I was already thinking to myself that I probably won't be going back to the trail at the end of this year. But it's a little bit speculative, isn't it? I mean, you can't say never, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And if the borders are still closed by the end of this year, and I'm probably still going to be craving doing something, then I might end up heading back to the trail. But again, not really knowing where I'm going to be in terms of physical preparation and health preparation at that point, I don't want to put too much weight on it at this moment in time. But I have pretty much, I think, made a decision. Well, it's going to go one of two ways. I'm either going to just decide to do section hikes of the rest of the TA, or probably more likely is that I will decide to just go back to Cape Reinga and start again. And I actually quite like the idea of doing that, because it's my dog outside. She's doing loops around the garden. But yeah, I remember telling a couple of people that a few weeks back, and they kind of just looked at me and said, why would you want to do that? But it's the pull. It's the pull of the trail. And you know, I know now what I can do and what I can't do. And so it would be really nice to get to the end of Nine Mile Beach and just carry on through the Northern Forest. And it would be really nice to do a continuous through hike as much as possible. And, you know, to start walking at the top and just not to stop until I get to Bluff. So I like the idea of doing all of that. I like the idea of being able to go and hike the North Island again, because I know what's coming. But also I realized that I have to do something to build up a substantial amount of fitness before I get to the South Island. So I have the opportunity to hike northbound on the South Island if I really want to, but I don't want to do it. It's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to hike southbound and arrive in Bluff. So I'll do that. Of course, it means that there's not that option there for me, but I will do that. But, you know, starting from the top means that I get to build up all that fitness again, get used to being on the trail again and all that kind of stuff. But if I do that, I will probably not be doing it until the other international hikers are back on the trail, because I missed that. I really missed being able to connect with other people from all sorts of different places in all different walks of life, making friends from around the world, and friends that, you know, you're going to have for life. So, you know, Julia and I don't talk as often as I would like, but I really enjoy getting on the phone to her and just chatting with her and, you know, reminiscing about the TA, but also making plans for other adventures, because, you know, what better way to enjoy your life than to meet up with somebody else in a completely different country and go on another adventure with them together. and I really missed that this year. I've missed being able to connect with other people in that way. And again, Kiwis as a nation, very friendly, great people, but not always the easiest people to get in with, to really make a connection with. I've always found that, whereas maybe it's probably just me, but whereas I instantly was finding connection with these other people on the trail. And I miss that. I really miss that. TA hikers in general. I mean, I've made connection with Kiwi hikers on the trail as well, but that's because you all have this TA thing as a goal. So I want to see a lot more of those people back on the trail, and I want to have that kind of experience again. So yeah, that's what I'm kind of looking forward to. So yeah, anyway. All right, well, I think I've gabbled on enough for now, and if I don't stop now, I'm probably going to actually lose my voice. So a huge, big thank you to all of you who have joined tonight. Thank you for asking some really great questions. I really appreciate that. Some really good theoretical questions, and also some other bits and pieces about the TA as well. So if you're here just to see Te Araroa videos, then there will be more of that coming. And if you specifically want to know about some specific part of the TA, then let me know, because either I'll have a conversation with you personally, or I might even decide to make a video about it at some point too. So, but otherwise, I hope you enjoy all of the other videos that will be coming in the next few weeks and months. There's some other pretty cool things coming from the South Island, which I'm really excited to show for you. And just after that, wherever it ends up leading. But again, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon, or maybe it's a Friday morning, depending on where you are in the world. Have a great weekend, and hopefully we can do another one of these again in the next few months or so. Okay. All right, guys. Take care, and happy trails.